Hello, and welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. I'm Ryan Purvis, your host, supported by our producer Heather Bicknell. In this series, you'll hear stories and opinions from experts in the field, stories from the front lines, the problems they face and how they solved them, the areas they focused on from technology, people and processes, to the approaches they took that will help you to get to the grips with the digital workspace inner workings.
It's been a minute. How have you been?
Yeah, it's been a long time. Feels like ages.
I know.
I've been good, thanks. I've been good. It has been quite busy. I mean, with we're moving into a house here, so we've had to find a house and set it all up. So that's been we're moving in next week, so that's been quite entertaining. And how are things with you?
Good. I don't know if you can tell that I have a new view here, but I finally set up my standing desk. So however many months after I started talking about it, it's finally here. So that's been fun.
And how are you finding it?
I like it a lot. I feel like it helps me stay a little bit more alert. I just feel a little bit more consistently awake throughout the day, which has been nice. Mm-hmm. And yeah, otherwise I just feel like it's good to, get up, stretch my legs. It just wasn't feeling like, I know I've started to see articles about how people's postures are being affected by the pandemic and the long-term work from home. And I can definitely see why.
Yeah. It's the comment about alertness is very important. The other thing is, something to bear in mind, of course, is that if you're using any of these sort of smart devices, it doesn't detect you moving because you rest your wrists usually on the counter. So you need to actually move your hands away from the desk as well sometimes.
Yeah, I did notice that. I thought I would hit my stand ring just with ease. But I noticed the first day I had it on, I missed like 4 hours because my hands were on the keyboard instead of by my side. So you have to still pay attention to it, which is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, but it's good. It's good for you. There was actually something else the other day saying that there's no evidence that standing all day helps you more than sitting. So you need to find a balance between the two. I don't know. I find that the alertness piece is definitely there.
Yeah, and I still need to get just a regular standing mat. So right now I have the balance board that it came with. So I am like forced to shift around a little bit, which is actually good. I don't like to stand in one spot for too long. I'm kind of fidgety. So
yeah. No, good. Well, I wish you many happy hours of standing.
Thank you. And then I can finally use my new webcam at a normal angle. It's all come together.
Fantastic. Cool. So we wanted to chat about a couple things today.
Yeah. So I know you wanted to chat about interim CIO work today. So maybe you could just kick us off with how this came about.
Yeah, so it's not just interim; it's also what they call fractional. So I'm involved in a few groups, as I mentioned before, and something that I've noticed going up in my career as well is sometimes you don't need a heavy hitter to come into your business for a long period of time. You need them for a short period of time. And I say heavy hitter, using the sort of baseball analogy of you need someone in to come hit a home run to clear the bases, or to you want that big match temperament. But then the rest of the team still has to do the normal things. So where this has come from for me is, and something that I'm doing as well, is the opportunity to go in and help a business for a short period of time. It could be 6 months, could be a year, it could be part-time, it could be, it could be a year, 2 days a week, it could be 6 months full-time. But you bring in your experience, you help them get on the path, you get them through some milestones, and then you basically hand it back to either you help them hire someone to replace you that's more potentially culturally fitted to the business. Might be a difference in costs as well, or it might be geographically different. You might have someone, I'm based in London normally, or West Sussex, but I've been helping a company here in South Africa. So when I go back to the UK, they want someone local that they can see to help them through what they're doing. So the sort of interim thing, as I said, is what it is. It's a short-term engagement. However short-term that could be, or it could be fractional. It could be 1 or 2 days a week. But you're really bringing something to the party that they couldn't necessarily get full-time, but they get the value as well. And that's really the crux of it, I think.
So what's the normal? What are the sets of scenarios where a company might bring in an interim or a fractional CIO? Is it usually when someone's left, or maybe they haven't had a CIO in the past and they just need one for a short term?
Those are both good examples of exactly that. So I'm talking to a company at the moment. They've had someone in place for a long time. He hasn't done a great job. They realize that they need to hire someone to come into the long term. But in the short term, they need to fix a whole lot of stuff because they've got regulatory problems they've got to address. So that's potentially where I go in, 1 day a week. They've got an operational team, they've got an engineering team to do all the stuff, but they just need direction on where to focus. And then part of that process is to help them hire. They'll go find the candidates through a search company, but they'll want me to help them choose the right person. And it's a role that I wouldn't want personally full time, which suits me as well, because I don't get, I've got no conflict in the sense of, well, none of you guys are good because I want the job. It's a case of, well, I know I'm not the right fit, but I can help you with this problem. But then we'll put someone in place that at least I can test them based on knowing the environment, which is always the other difficult thing, is getting to know the environment. So if that comes off, that's a good example. The other one would be they've never had one before. So they need to justify maybe to the board or to shareholders that they need one. So what they'll do is they'll run like a test, a 6-month or a year test, where they'll pay at a premium someone to come in and show them the value. And then if they see the value, they'll say, okay, now we understand. Now we'll bring somebody in. There's other use cases as well. You might have an acquisition and you've got 2 competing CIOs or CTOs, and you don't necessarily want to give it to either one of them. You want someone independent to come in and do the merger, and then again help decide on who's the right person for the job. Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's a nice flexible consulting engagement where you are, the boundaries are pretty clear.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. So what are the kind of things that people do as interim or fractional CIOs? Is it typically centered around one big project, or can people kind of come in and decide what the work is that needs to be done?
Yeah, I mean, I use the favorite IT phrase, it depends. So I've come in, once with an organization that was going in one direction. The CEO wanted to go a different direction, but he didn't want to create a political or religious argument about it. So I came in and did an audit, came back to the sort of board, presented what I'd found and what I thought was the direction of travel. And that ended up being a year of changing where the business went, by building out a new product in the suite. And that allowed, so instead of trying to move the whole organization to this new direction, we took a small team, built a new product, and then slowly pulled the teams in behind that new product, to align the business in the right direction. So that's a good example of one that I've been involved in, a couple of years ago. Another one is that I'm looking at the moment is they've had a head of product. They now realize they need someone a little bit more strategic, but they don't know what they need. Is it a CTO? Is it a CIO? They don't know if it's going to be if the person they've got can step up. So I potentially come in, fill the role for a couple days a week, coach the person below, see if that person's the right person, and if not, then look at hiring in someone else on top of them. So yeah, it varies. I mean, basically, you're a mercenary in the nicest sense, going into for a mission that's clearly bounded. I'm here to do this thing, and when that's done, either there's a new mission, or I leave and say thank you and it's great, and keep in touch. It all depends.
Do you find there are sort of consistencies that help you get up to speed and like ground in each new environment, or is it really just a mixed bag and surprises every time?
Yeah, I think it'd be very arrogant to say that they're all the same and you can pick it up in a couple of hours and whatever. Mm-hmm. I think every environment is going to be different, purely because you've got different people involved, different personalities. You will see common patterns of things, and there will be questions you ask every time, because you want to get a lay of the land. You always want to have a picture to what the environment's got. So. You also want to talk to the business a lot. You want to understand what their expectations are. Usually that's where I would start anyways, just trying to get their view on everything, and trying to understand usually where their frustrations or their pain is, and then sort of work that backwards towards what's the landscape. Because sometimes your biggest problem is the way that IT has been set up, which is usually as a rigid organization that doesn't respond well to change, which is ironic because technology changes all the time. But the frustration the business typically has is that they want to do something and IT can't meet that demand, and usually says no, so they go around IT, and then you end up with shadow IT, which is the business going and buying a whole bunch of stuff on their credit cards and expecting it all to magically merge together when they want it to. That's sort of one scenario.
Yeah. So who would you say is a good fit to work as, in this role, either fractionally or as an interim CIO? Are there certain, qualities that you think help? Like, can people do it on top of their existing roles? How do people get into sort of this line of work?
Yeah. I think, this is very much a network-driven industry. You will have some headhunters or researchers that will find these roles. They've been appointed, etc. But usually it comes through a contact who they've been contacted by someone else or know someone or whatever it is, and they've realized they're not a good fit. And it comes down. To answer your question around sort of personality, it's someone that can talk to the business, but also talk to the technical folk. Almost a translation layer, needs to be presentable to the business, at all levels, and then be able to set out, based on understanding what's going on, be able to set out the direction of travel, and not necessarily how to get there all the time, but be able to get that how out of the people involved, because usually the people have the answers. It just needs someone to articulate that to the decision makers. And that's usually how these things work. You asked the third question in there.
I think just how, you said it mostly comes through networks, so maybe people can't really proactively search for these things as much.
Well, yes, you will see them advertised. There are a lot of interim roles. But the ones that I'm mostly seeing are the ones that I've been contacted, or I've seen someone in one of my groups post something and I've had, that could be, I could help there. And you have a chat with the person, and then you see if there's a synergy. It's like going for a cup of coffee and saying, well, what's your problem? Okay, yes, I can help you. Or it's not really my thing, but John over there or Jane, they're better suited. Let me put you in contact with them, and then, hopefully it comes off.
How do you find the time for all of these things, Ryan? This is just a broader question.
Well, I'm only, with Hilo, I'm only part-time, so a couple of days a week anyway. So I've got the extra day or two here and there to do this stuff. It all depends on the demand. Sometimes you've got to work the late nights or the early mornings to do something. But you've got to be very conscious. That's why I say it's very nice if you go into the role. It's not a full-time job where you're just going to get paid a salary or whatever it is, and you're there 5 days a week. Often you're cutting it based on what your availability is and what their budget is, and what the expectations are. And you're saying, okay, great, for this thing, I can do 5 days a month for X number, and this is your output at the end of it. And if it changes, then we talk about changes. It's not a typical, like I say, just because it's not a what's the word, a consulting agreement where you pay for 1 day a week at a day rate, and whatever happens in that day in 24 hours, I'll deliver nonstop. It's usually a results orientated delivery.
Do you feel like your background in consulting has assisted you in this kind of thing?
Yeah, I think I've been lucky in the sense that my career started off I started as a developer, but even before that, I was always doing salesy things, always selling some idea to somebody. So I think that's always helped. And as I went through my sort of system integrator world of going into customers, hearing what their problems were, trying to solve them, that has always helped me. And even when I moved to the UK and I flipped over to the client side, you were still selling internally, but you also in both cases you're always delivering as well. So you always had to believe in what you're doing, and also taking the pain and the learnings from doing something. So that that's the experience that you really give into these organizations. So when you go in and I say there's patterns, you can say, okay, so you want to move everything to the cloud. There's a pattern to doing that where you're not just moving, lifting and shifting on-premise to cloud. You're redesigning the application to use cloud capabilities because you want to get the benefits of moving to the cloud. Otherwise, what's the point? You might as well just stay on-premise in some cases. So yeah, I think it's all led to this in a short answer.
Are there any particular projects or any of these initiatives that you'd like to dig into more? Were there any that stood out?
So the one that I can probably talk about is the singular decisions one. I mean, the rest I'm still under NDA on, so I can't. But that was a good one because, that was a business that had been doing something for 20 years one way, realized that they needed to make a change, which is to go the analytics route or provide a service with, and this was packaging up their IP into a product with their people. And that's, they went from being called one name, which was PayWizard, which is the original business name, to the new name, which is Singular Decisions. And the product is called Singular. And in fact, that's something that I still want to do is get Bhavesh on here to talk about it, because that is the great example of a business that was brick and mortar, a call center, to now being a software as a service platform with customers using their software. And he's done that in 3-4 years.
Do you think, has remote working made it easier for people to find people to step in as a CIO? Do you feel like people are opening up their, you mentioned the company you're working with in South Africa, that having someone local is important. But I'd imagine that people are looking broader as well and sort of opened up that world.
Yeah, I think you got to be pretty naive to think that you can only find good talent in your geolocation. So a lot of these companies I'm still talking to back in the UK, even though I'm down here in South Africa, because this is not me being arrogant, but my skills and knowledge will help them. So it doesn't matter that I'm not there every day. 9 to 5, and in fairness, most of them are still in lockdown, so it wouldn't matter anyway. But I think you honestly can look probably plus or minus 3 hours, maybe longer, to work with somebody, someone's going to have to put in some late nights and early mornings if the geographic time zones don't work out. But if that gets you a better result in the end, then it's worth it probably. Mm-hmm. And these guys in SA, just happen to say, we really want someone local, but that's just a comfort level. If they couldn't find someone, and if we build a good relationship, there would still be a case where they'd phone me and talk, and we talk on the phone every day anyway. So, what's the difference? And it's not a lot of time for me. It's it's half an hour a week. It's it can still work that way.
Yeah. So what are some things you learned from these experiences? It's mostly on the people side. And this comes back to the point that I think most of the times the answer's there. You just got to listen for it. And you've almost got to let everyone, a lot of the times you're coming in there and the people that have the answers haven't been given the opportunity to talk it out, or they've shared it, but they haven't shared it out in the right way. So they haven't been taken seriously. And you sort of know it's happening when someone turns around and goes, well, I told them to do this years ago and they didn't do it. And here we are now, and now they brought you in to come and tell us what we already knew. It's that kind of, openness and honesty that I look forward to getting. And I think that's where the face-to-face stuff is missing. Because you want to have an honest conversation that's, I don't want to say off the record, but the minute you're on a video, people feel like they are on the spot. Whereas a more casual conversation, going for a walk, having a cup of coffee over across the table, loosening up, that stuff is missing. But other than that, it's learning the politics. Your questions get better. You ask better questions when you come in. You also learn from seeing some mistakes that you wouldn't have made. You would have known. Your best practice, you would never have done that in your head. But now you've seen someone who's done that. Now you can see the cause and effect of doing it that way. And sometimes some of those things you think are best practices that are actually things you never do turn out to not be that good a practice, because actually the other way does work just as well. It has different benefits. You learn those things. So I always liken it to playing poker. You only get good at playing poker the more hands you play against more people that you play against, and more variations that you play, because then you start seeing little nuances that you hadn't seen before, and that sort of thing. So it's a continual learning environment, that's for sure. I think the comments about a lot of it being about people and culture and sort of these entrenched ideas about what works and what doesn't. And maybe the things that people have, raised a flag for again and again that get pushed to the side, that you're then the one to actually, helping that across the finish line is so, it rings so true. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's another side to it, which is you also got to learn to pick your battles, which I was always told that, but I never really learned how to do that, because coming back to this usually being a ring fence thing, you don't get involved in some of the politics around some stuff, but you're also not there to solve everyone's problems. But sometimes the solution is to make there a way for those problems to be captured, so they can be treated. So it could be, like putting in a risk management framework where people can raise risks. Those risks can be accepted, they can be treated, or they can be ignored. But at least now it's tracked, as opposed to just people moaning about it. And that's sometimes the constructive thing that you do is you add frameworks to handle things. Same as ideation. Everyone has an idea for a product. Or improvements to the product, but how do those things get into the pipeline, into the backlog? How do they get prioritized up into the actual build, and how do they actually get delivered? So you need to that's the stuff that's your experience coming in to say, okay, well, this is how we've done it somewhere else. Maybe that'll work here.
Yeah. This is reminding me of. And I've been trying to remember this for like 10 minutes. So maybe you'll remember and you can remind me. But the conversation we had Mark Chillingworth, the CIO writer, and he talked about these two kinds of CIOs, one on the more of the product side, and then who was the other one? Yeah, who was the other one? Do you remember what the other kind of persona was?
I can't remember what he called it, but it's probably the more internally focused CIO, CTO versus the externally focused CIO, CTO. So product versus infrastructure. Most of us, when I say most of us, I'm talking about sort of CIOs, CTOs, kind of do both all the time. And then you'll find there's usually a sub role or a division that's created, which will be then a CTO or a CDO, Chief Digital Officer, or a tech lead or a head of technology or something, or whatever the label is. But what you realize pretty quickly is these roles are quite broad, and you can't do them all on your own. You need good teams and good people to take different initiatives on, and you're really just keeping it's like a conductor. You're just keeping everything in harmony so the music sounds right, or at least plays a tune that's appealing as opposed to painful.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, unless there's anything else you wanted to, do you feel like we covered everything, or is there any other aspect of this that you think could be interesting to talk about? Well,
I think, to your point, how do people find these things? If anyone ever wanted to chat to me about it, they're more than welcome to reach out. It's as simple as, sometimes we talk about it here a lot. You have a barbecue or braai, as we would say, and a guy's saying to you across the fire, geez, I'd love to build this app. How would I do it? Now there's a conversation like that, which is usually, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then goes nowhere, or it's a follow up and say, well, let's whiteboard that out. Let's actually go and see if there's an idea there. It sometimes starts like that. And I think in today's age, it's so easy to reach out and talk to someone, whereas before it wasn't. So do it. If you've got an idea or you've got a problem in the office, reach out.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Heather Bicknell is our producer and editor. Thank you, Heather, for your hard work on this episode. Please subscribe to the series and rate us on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Follow us on Twitter @the DWW Podcast. The show notes and transcripts will be available on the website, www.digitalworkspace.works. Please also visit our website, www.digitalworkspace.works, and subscribe to our newsletter. And lastly, if you found this episode useful, please share with your friends or colleagues.